Welcome to the Vintage Ballers podcast. I'm your host, Brad Coreno. And on today's episode, we have Corey Jones joining the show. Corey played with LeBron James at St. Vincent St. Mary High School in the early 2000s before attending Walsh University and playing basketball, where he won a national championship in 2005. He is now a motivational speaker where he travels the country speaking to children. So without further ado, please welcome Corey Jones. What I want to do, Corey, first is, thank you for being here.
No problem.
I want to start off and go back to your childhood.
Okay.
And, when do you first remember falling in love with the game of basketball?
It started, I have actually a video of the younger, and my dad's a big football guy. He played football at Avon Lake, which you're from Avon Lake, that's football is king, like most suburbs or cities in Ohio. And we're playing football, and it's 1 o'clock in the morning. I'm 2 years old, and I can barely throw it. I'm not really doing much with it, but I had a little Tykes hoop up, and it's a good height. Like I can't really dunk it much. I couldn't really jump anyway back then. So I can't jump when I was older. I couldn't jump when I was younger, but I was just shooting it, and I was really shooting the basketball. And it just something that I would even look back to today. I'm like, that was a really cool video. I made like 15, 20 shots, and I'm like 4 or 5 feet away from the basket, 2 years old. So growing up, you have to play football, especially in my family. So 4th, 5th grade, you play football, and it's not like the football you see on TV. When you play like 3rd grade football, it's just running around with the heavy thing on your head. And I go, this is really boring. And the basketball that I could play was just more fun. So I just found more success with that. And I go, why would I want to go get hit? Why I can go play basketball? And I just kind of had a little natural love for basketball. And it's a sport you can do by yourself.
That's
so
true.
My sister I'm really close to my sister. She's 6 years older than me. So you get the luxury of knowing how to share your time and everything, and being not an only child, but you kind of are an only child. One, she's like a girl, so we're not competing over the same stuff. And 6 years is a long time. So I had a lot of time by myself. So being able to just grab a ball, go to Blessed Park, and I could be there forever. I don't have to worry about anything else. And that was kind of how it worked.
I love it. Yeah, I didn't really. It's funny because you talk about Avon Lake. It's definitely a football city. There's no question about it. And everybody, it's all football. And obviously for years they had, they still do have some good teams, and winning the national or the championship in 2003 and all that. So yeah, they're a football city. But basketball, I feel like when you were there too. Like I know you left early on, but like back we had Tom Port and BJ Englewright and guys in that era, my era, and they had some pretty good teams back in that day. Not anywhere near as good as SVSM, but they had some pretty good teams. But with football was always a king there, so it's funny how you don't really grow up in Avon Lake. Most kids grow up there thinking they want to be the fullback or the running back or the quarterback. Yeah. They don't think about being the point guard or the center of the basketball team.
What's crazy that you say that. You're at that era when I did transfer out of Avon Lake to St. V. I mean, that was probably one of the better eras of Avon Lake basketball.
Really?
With Tom and Brian, and Coach Olinger was a great coach.
Olinger, yep.
It had nothing to do with just Avon Lake. It's just with St. V, and the opportunity was what opened for me. And I mean, if you think of all the years I could have transferred or been at Avon Lake, that would have been the least likely that you would leave Avon Lake, because they were really good. And
exactly.
It showed to be really good.
Well, I think you ended up making a good choice. We'll talk about that in a little bit later, but you obviously made a pretty good choice playing where you did. But, I want to, so when you were younger, Corey, do you have a favorite team, a favorite player?
I'm a 90s kid, so you grew up watching the Bulls. My dad isn't a big sports fan where it's like, all right, you're going to watch the Indians, you're going to watch the Browns, you're going to watch the Cavs. He really didn't like Ohio State. Don't let him hear I said this, but he didn't like Ohio State because he didn't like Cooper. And when Tressel got the job is when he gave me an Ohio State hat. Goes, well, right. And then D'Angelo was going to Ohio State. It's like, now you got like Ohio State. So I'm like a 02, 01 Ohio State fan since then. So we had no true loyalty growing up with sports like that. So I watched players, and Michael Jordan was the biggest thing out there. So I would follow the Bulls. Probably had a Bulls jersey, Jordan stuff, but that's about it.
Yeah, I mean, back then I have a lot of so I run a 90s page on Instagram about the 90s NBA actually. And, I have so many former players to follow, and it's funny because that era, Corey, is so beloved still with Shaq and Olajuwon, and of course, early Kobe and Robinson, Ewing, Reggie Miller, you name it. And then of course, MJ, the Bulls. It was just such an iconic era with really crossover from the 80s, because you still had Magic and Bird at the early onset, and then of course you had the Kobe's and those guys coming in, like Tim Duncan coming in later on, and KG. So it was a lot of crossover from the 90s, but then the Jordan was the epitome of what it was all about. But yeah, you couldn't grow up. I hated Jordan when I was younger because I was a Cavs
Yeah.
fan, so I couldn't stand them, but you couldn't stop watching. I
I
mean, it
know.
was must watch TV, whether you
Imagine
hated them or
having a
loved them.
league pass. Having a
Oh,
league pass back then would have
back
been
then.
awesome
And I
watching
always
them.
tell kids nowadays, Corey, if social media would have been big back in the 90s, I mean, Jordan would be, I don't even know how many followers he would have right now. It'd be ridiculous. He still is, an icon. But back then he was, I just can't describe to the kids nowadays how big he really was. I mean, he
It's
was
hard.
it is. I mean,
Yeah.
LeBron, the closest thing is LeBron, but Jordan really was the first guy to revolutionize the NBA beyond Magic and Bird. I mean, he took it globally, and basketball became the sport because of Jordan. So,
Yeah.
like I say, it was just a whole different era back then. But
Yeah.
so let's go on to your high school years. And
Cool.
obviously, I know there was a lot of controversy when you left to go to SVSM, and you got a lot of flack for that, Corey, unfairly, of course. You looking back at it now, I mean, you're a young kid, you're making a decision that's best for your career and best for your life. And how was it, number one, dealing with that adversity, and number two, what was it like transitioning over to play with a budding superstar in LeBron James?
At the time, it was extremely hard. I'll be honest with you. And now, as I'm an older adult, I look back and I go, it was even harder than I could realize. I look back at it and I go, as a 16-year-old kid, what was I thinking? Kind of like that way. Not that I don't regret the choice at all, but I was like, man, if my kid came to me and said that, I would be like, you're going to go through the lion's den. I don't understand the flack that I got, because I was good at Avon Lake, but I wasn't. I mean, I had a good year at Avon Lake as a freshman, and to think the year that I had as an Avon Lake freshman, to say that I want to go play at St. Vincent St. Mary seems like mind-boggling to me as I think about older. What helped with the decision is it wasn't to go play with LeBron or Drew or Rome. It wasn't to go actually win state championships. It was really to go play with Frankie Walker and Brandon Weems and be a part of that Akron basketball culture that I was playing with at AAU. That's all I really wanted. And then during the spring and summer months, I'd play AAU basketball, and I would go play in these gyms where I'm not close to the best player. I am slow, I can't jump, but I can make some shots, and I'm holding my own. And then I would go take the hour back, on 90, and get back home and be like, this isn't the same that I'm used. It's not what I'm used to. It's not fair that I can go to that Akron gym, that little gym, or St. V, and practice and play and go 2 hours there and do that for only 3 months out of the year, and then come home and play this type of basketball for 9 months out of the year. It's just a different reality. It has nothing to do. It's just, that's what it was. And I just told my dad, and he immediately was like, no, you can't do this. And then I told my mom, and she immediately said, you're not going to be able to do this. And I just convinced him and said, I don't care if I ever play. I just want to go and be involved in that type of culture and that type of basketball for 12 months out of the year. And then when it's all said and done, I'll know if I'm good enough or not. Because I don't want to go and play and score a lot of points and maybe do some things and have it in the back of my head being a false reality, knowing 50 minutes or an hour down the road on 77, it's really good basketball. So that was really the true driving force. If my intentions were to be an All-American or try to be win many state championships or try to get whatever, it wouldn't have worked. It was really just, I want to be a part. I want to be the best player I can possibly be, and where the chips lie, that's fine with me. And I don't care if I ever play. And that really helps me, to be honest with you.
And Corey, that's pretty insightful, especially for a 16-year-old to kind of think about all that, because at the time, I mean, obviously most 16-year-olds are worried about partying and girls. They're not even thinking about like long-term, like what my basketball career, the next couple of years, what does this look like? So I mean, to think about that, and it really sets you up, because I mean, obviously SVSM now, that era of SVSM basketball, I mean, it's a dynasty, and it's I mean, not just because of LeBron, but just because everyone, I mean, Rome, and you said, Sheon Cotton and Willie and all the different Drew and all those guys. I mean, there's so many, there's so many names that everyone recognizes because of that era and what you guys accomplished. And of course, LeBron, his career now, and coming back to Cleveland and winning a championship, he'll always be cemented here, for multiple reasons. But just, you're always going to be a part of that legacy. So when you look back at that, how does that make you feel, knowing that you are part of that legacy? And I mean, everyone knows you. I mean, I was telling people you're going to be on the podcast. Everyone knows you, and whether they were a fan of SVSM or not, they all know you.
Sure.
So you are part of that legacy.
It's crazy because St. V is such a small part of my life. I've been to more Avon Lake football games than I've been to St. V football games. And I didn't grow up being a St. Vincent St. Mary fan. I didn't know the first St. Vincent St. Mary basketball game that I ever watched was the first one that I played in. So I didn't
Wow.
know much about it. And you're part of that era. And once you're in it, you're just in it. You're not thinking much other than that. And then I go back 10, 12 years later and I see all the banners that not only that we've won in our history, but like recently, and the players have come through there. And I get to walk in, not very intimidating, 6'1", 6'2", white kid shows up in the gym and like everyone knows who I am. And it's pretty crazy. They're, top state rank, they're top in the state and all that stuff. And then Coach Drew and Willie, who's the AD there now, can say, this was our 2 guard when we were here, and we can shoot it really well, listen to what he has to say and coach. And to be able to have that welcoming when I come back there it's really kind of amazing. It's kind of jaw dropping knowing that I was only there for that 3 years. But once you're a part of that culture and you can be a part of that brotherhood, that people that are there, you're there for life. And that's just one thing that I loved about being there. And I love being a part of that program still to this day.
And Corey, that program is a national. I mean, it's nationally now. It's not just an Ohio program. It's like St. Ignatius football, where it's nationally known. So you were you were really the beginning of that, that legacy that, now everyone around the country knows. I mean, even when I lived in California for a little bit, and I would mention SVSM and people knew exactly who they were because of LeBron, of course, and the whole dynasty. So,
yeah, it's crazy. You think, what you do in your high school, and if you can win a championship or do some things, something special, I mean, it lasts forever. I can take my kids there, grandkids there, and that banner will never go down, or that era will never be erased for no reason. So something that you may want to talk to kids when you go speak to a football team or something. You say, well, if you can accomplish something, it's up there forever. It's pretty cool.
It is really cool. And I have to ask you this, of course, the question you probably always get, but what was it like playing with a young LeBron? I mean, you're one of the few people, Corey, that will ever say they play with a high school LeBron. There's only a few people that could say that. So what was it like, and what was your experience with him on and off the court, and especially on the court, because he was so dynamic, of course, even in high school. What was it like?
He, in a way, I said this to a couple of friends of mine who are watching high school basketball, and I said, I don't want to be pretentious, but he's ruined high school basketball for me. And he's like, what do you mean? I go, I always see kids who are going to North Carolina, going to other schools. I go get to watch them up close. I sit courtside, and they're not even close to what LeBron was at 16, 17 years old. Like, I have a high school basketball experience that's one of a lifetime, being one with him and this with the team that we have. So it was extraordinary. Looking back now, I wish I would have taken more videos or written down more notes of just things that have happened. I can tell you, and this is what maybe other players of that team will tell you, is the practices were insane. What that guy would do in practice would just be amazing. Just switching teams. He would get into it with everybody in and out, and it would be so intense. And at that time, I mean, that 3 hours, 2.5 hours is the best part of our days. There's nothing else to do. There was a time where Coach Drew, who's married, he wants to get home and have dinner, and he's trying to turn off the lights on us. We're like, we have nothing else to do. What are we going to do on the west side of Akron? What are you going to do on the north side of Akron? You're just going to go home. This is what we want to do. So we have to like fight him to keep the lights on. It was incredible. It was a great experience. One thing, and I'll take this forever, is my sophomore year, I was an 8th or 9th man on the team, probably closer to 9. And I'd get in a few games, but you get 6 quarters every game. So you can play JV. I could have played JV, and I did not play JV. Me and a friend, a teammate of mine, Brandon, we decided not to play JV. We'll solely play. We will be the 8th, 9th guy in the varsity. We're not JV players, right? And at the end of the year, going into the playoffs, we have our team only meeting powwow. And LeBron called us out. He's like, you should be playing JV. You get 6 quarters. He goes, my freshman year, I found out I got 6 quarters. I had to get kicked off the bus to go to the games. Like, he flat out told me, he's like, I would sneak on the freshman games so I can get an extra 2 quarters or whatever. Wow. And they're like, and I'm like, serious? He's like, yeah. And he told me that after the JV season, knowing that a freshman LeBron, who was probably all state or whatever, and he's like, I would try to play freshman games if I can get quartered. You hoop, you play if you can. And I remember that was like a huge lesson for me going into the next season. Like, I wish I would have taken advantage of that. But yeah, guy just loves to hoop. He loves to play basketball deep down in the soul, all those guys. And I think that's why that team was successful, because we had 8 or 9, 10, 12 basketball players who just loved to hoop. So
it really was an incredible team. And Corey, I first found out LeBron way before most people did because of my brother. My brother was a coach, and he just actually retired recently. but he was a coach back then for boys basketball in Southern Ohio. But he was a leading scorer in the city of Cleveland back in the early 90s. So all the coaches knew him here. So there was a guy named Bob Watson who was a Shaker Heights coach, and he would organize a lot of camps back then. And he called my brother up. I think it was 99. I don't think LeBron was even in high school yet. And my brother tells me, he's like, hey, Bob, Bob called me up to go see this kid named LeBron from Akron. He was like 14 at the time. He's going to be Michael Jordan, blah, blah. And my brother was kind of skeptical, comes up and sees him in an open gym. And so the first play of the game, it was one of the seniors he was playing against. He was probably 14, goes up for a layup, and LeBron blocks it and touches the top of the white of the backboard.
Yeah.
The whole gym goes, oh, my brother looked at Bob and goes, wow. And he goes, this kid was just dominating these kids who were 4 years older than him. And at that time, when you're like, 14 compared to an 18-year-old, that's a man compared to a boy.
Yes.
LeBron was still dominating these guys. And my brother told me, he came back, he goes, that kid's going to be the next Michael Jordan. I thought, so I told people in Avon Lake, I was telling people my grade, and they're laughing. Oh yeah, of course, this kid. And now when we won the championship in 16, I had kids texting me saying, I remember almost 20 years ago, saying, this kid from SVS. So, and he wasn't even in SVSM yet. So this is like, so I kind of feel like I always have that bond with LeBron in the sense that I feel like I knew about him before people, because of my brother, not because of me. So, so it's still kind of a running joke with a lot of the Avon Lake friends that I have that knew about that. And they're always like, man, Coreno said that years ago.
I think him growing up in Akron helped him. If you want to continue, I mean, if he was from New York or LA or Chicago, it probably would have blown up too quick. Being in Akron
that's
really did help him, because he kind of was under the radar till 8th, 9th, then sophomore year he really blew up. But nowadays, if he was doing that at 14 at a Nike tournament down there, he would have blown up. So
everywhere.
I think being from Akron really did kind of help him a little bit.
Yeah, that's a great point. Like I said, my brother hadn't even heard about him yet, and he, I believe he was either in 8th grade or going in the freshman year. He hadn't won a state championship yet, so he must have been going in the freshman year. But I remember, because no one knew who he was, and at least no one, he wasn't what he was a couple years later. He was on the cover of ESPN and magazine and all that. So, but yeah, so and LeBron, again, that story with me and my family goes back years, just because of my brother seeing him at that open gym. And I'll never forget my brother coming into the house and how excited he was. And I was probably 16, and he's like, this kid's amazing and blah, blah. And so I got excited, but I'm thinking, is he really going to be that? Because how many times do you hear about kids coming out of high school and then
all the time.
Back then they bombed. Most of them didn't. I mean, it was very rare for a Kobe or Kevin Garnett. That was a very rare thing back then.
Yeah.
So to have LeBron, I mean, I think even in the draft in 03, Corey, people thought with LeBron, they're kind of skeptical. They're like, is this kid really going to be this good? Do we take Carmelo over him? Do we take even Darko back then? People were thinking about Darko. And of course, now we look back and laugh at that. But we didn't know. So you would have been one of the few people that would know, like, this kid's incredible. But unless you really saw him day in and day out, you were back then, it was high school kids coming out and going straight to the NBA was not really a thing until LeBron, until that era.
Yeah, it wasn't. One thing about him, he was like a young, it's a young senior. He's a young 17-year-old, young 18-year-old. He looked like he was 16, 17, or when he was 14, probably looked like he was 14. So he dominated the game just with his passing and knowledge. It was far above his peers. So to say that I think it would have been this back when I was 16, 17 years old, I would have been lying. But I knew that he was going to be, like, I had no doubt that he was going to be #1 draft pick and rookie of the year, and very, very good. I didn't think quite like this, but I wouldn't have been shocked if someone would have told me that either. But and we all kind of knew that he was going to be pretty special.
I mean, when I look at the NBA, and NBA is a huge part of my life, and I've been studying the sport for years. Yeah. It's him and Jordan with me. I mean, that's who, and I no disrespect to all the other guys, but I mean, I don't see anybody, and the love, the late Kobe and all that, but LeBron and Jordan, what they could do on the court, and LeBron, how he could take a team. Look how many teams he's taken to the finals. It really probably would have been in last place if it wasn't for his. I mean, that's how good he is. Yeah, he single-handedly can take you from being one of the worst teams in the league to possibly making an NBA finals. That's just the kind of guy. So not many players. I mean, Jordan was a different kind of cat. Jordan was the ultimate competitor. I've never seen anybody that had the competitive drive that he had. But him and LeBron, to me, there's nobody that rivals those two in my mind in basketball history. And that's no disrespect to all the other great players.
Yeah, I agree. I lost you. Okay. No, I agree. They got their own little room in the Hall of Fame, in my opinion. Those two.
Completely agree. And what's your favorite high school memory? Yours personally, like, what was your favorite game? When you look back?
One of the coolest games was we were in North Carolina. We played RJ Reynolds. They were a top 10, top 5 program. I think they were preseason ranked 7th, and we had a really a tough schedule getting there. We traveled through the night one night, and we had no sleep, and we did another event. So we kind of came into the game on a Sunday afternoon pretty sluggish. And this team was 6'7", 6'7", 6'8", 6'7", and like 5'10", and all four of them were going Division One. One was going to North Carolina, and I was guarding a 6'7" wing player going to UNC Wilmington or something like that. The one thing that they didn't have, they had a 5'10", 5'9" freshman point guard. And we started the game warm-ups, and we're all kind of like sluggish. We're not super pumped. It's the largest crowd to ever watch a game in high school game in North Carolina. The guy gets on the microphone and he wants to bring this RJ Reynolds team out. And he says, welcome to, please welcome your RJ Reynolds team, the team that's going to beat LeBron James and the #1 team in the country, St. Vincent St. Mary. And like, the crowd went crazy. And LeBron stopped warm-ups, got everyone in, and between Drew, Rome, Sheon, and LeBron, like all getting in, boom, boom, boom. It was awesome. So we're like, okay, now we just got super juiced. And then game starts. This guy going North Carolina, LeBron's senior year, he was like a heavyweight boxer. They loaded up the schedule for him to go against, not necessarily great teams, but great players, right? So this kid's going North Carolina. He's LeBron's matchup. He comes down, ISO, scores a basket, pumps his chest, says what he has to say. This is his time to shine. We come down, empty possession, second possession. He comes down, scores again, and he's just like on fire, right? The crowd's going crazy. They're up 4-0. I think we were up like 27 or 30 at halftime after that. This kid going to North Carolina, he fouled out like third quarter.
Wow.
And like Coach Drew, like LeBron would have come out the game. Like, nope, we beat this. This is the 7th ranked team in the country. And we put them a good 30, 40 point. I mean, that's a bad, we only played 32 minutes. And wow. I remember we were at the game. I was like, we pressed them until we pressed them to the locker room. It was crazy. So that, and the Dayton game, we played Kettering Altars, #2 ranked team in the state, and a snowstorm, but they canceled every game except ours because 12,000 people were going to come to there, and that's a good money grab, I assume. So they play the game, and a 2nd ranked team in the state, and they play a certain type of zone where it allows me to be free. Everyone has their specialty. This is my specialty. And I was able to deliver, and I hit a couple threes early on. And then by the 2nd quarter, hit a few more. And then 3rd quarter goes around, 4th quarter, I'm up over between 6, 7, 8 threes. And it's a good round for me. And I have a good game for myself, but LeBron and everyone, probably LeBron had a much better game, all around game, what he's able to do. And after the game, they have a trophy and a microphone, and they announce that LeBron is the player of the game, as he should be, because he's mid-20s and 10 assists and all these other things. And he grabs the microphone, and it didn't really come to surprise to anybody on our team, but he said, thank you for allowing me to be MVP, but someone played better than me today at my team. I want to give this trophy to #3, Corey Jones, which was a cool, just like for one day, LeBron says I'm better. I had a better game than him, which he's just being modest. I didn't, but it was a pretty cool where he, gives me the trophy. So I was MVP.
That's awesome.
That day. So, but that's just kind of, he's just unselfish like that, unselfish teammate. And so that's a team we end up playing in the state championship too. So
yeah, I remember that actually. Yep. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I don't remember that snow game, but I remember the state championship game for sure. And I remember, Corey, there's a game. What was the game on ESPN? It was his first ESPN game, and like Dick Vitale did. I think Bill Walton was there. The Cleveland State, I believe it was. Yeah. And who were you guys playing? Was it Carmelo's team? Not Carmelo.
That was not. It technically is Carmelo Anthony's team. Was Oak Hill, but it wasn't Carmelo.
He was already in Syracuse then. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Yep. That was the following year. That was a crazy game. It kind of took us to that next level. Won by 20, like beat the #1 team in the country by 20 points. It just shows how good. And it's not just, really LeBron. I think everyone really had a great game. I think Rome had a really good game that day, and Drew just runs the floor. And Brandon, my teammate at Walsh, came in and he guarded the kid going to UConn for 2.5 quarters and almost shut him down. So, and that was a great game for a team win. We had many of those. It was a good team, really good team.
With all the other guys on that SVSM team, obviously they don't get nearly the amount of credit as they deserve because LeBron gets most of it, but and rightfully so, LeBron's incredible. But you guys also had some great players. So tell us about some of the other guys you played with and the impact they had on you.
Well, Drew and Rome had 8 to 10 years in professionally, and I'm probably at Soundgrange, probably more than that, 12, 13, 14 years playing professional basketball, both in the Hall of Fame, I presume, at Akron. Sheon and Willie both went on to play college athletics. Brandon and myself, Brandon Weems at Walsh University, his last year was the MVP of the conference, made an All-American team. Marcus Johnson played at Dayton. I mean, we had a freshman who's Marcus Johnson, who's probably second or third all time at St. V, coming off the bench at seventh or eighth man. So no, that team, again, all to play basketball, all wanted to win, and that's probably a really good, probably easy and tough team to coach, because I'll tell you, our practices. I mean, Coach Drew would say, okay, here's a basketball, 5-on-5 half court. You guys are playing the 5 all ones, and it'll take like 45 minutes because we would just be beating the crap out of each other. I would love to practice with that team one more time. It was just so good. It was incredible. And what's great about LeBron is who he is, but he walks through those gyms at St. V. He's just a dude from Akron, as far as everyone else's eyes, and especially Drew, Rome, and Sheon, and Willie, and Brandon, and those guys. We're calling fouls and travels, and we're going to go at you and double team you and do all that stuff. So he wasn't like walking in. No one was walking around eggshells around him. It was a cool experience.
And what was Coach Drew like? I mean, obviously he, what was it like playing for him, and what was his philosophy as far as the team is concerned?
He's very, 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 very good at gelling a team and keeping them motivated and sticking to what he believes in. He's not going to bend for anybody, even if you are a 4-time future NBA MVP. He's got his values. He's got what he wants as his players and team, and that's what he's going to get out of them. It was his second year. He will tell you probably today that he probably could have done maybe a few things differently, scheme-wise or whatnot, or maybe not. But he will tell you he's grown as a coach since then, and it proves. And he has, 5 or 6 state championships altogether. And I don't know how easy it was to coach that team with LeBron and all the hoopla around it. He did absolutely a great job. I don't know if I could have done any better, because to say it was crazy is a true understatement. And we're blessed that it wasn't during the social media or any other crazy age, because it would have been even crazier.
Yeah, it would have.
So, but no, he's really good. He's really good. Big in the faith, big in the developing young men. I was just telling a friend the other day, I mean, coming from St. Vincent St. Mary in that program, and 20 years in the program, we have maybe 1 or 2 true hiccups in that whole program, as far as people who maybe not have panned out, maybe gotten a little bit of trouble, and they're still trying to find their path and in a direction or whatnot. But to have that many players come through that program and be the alumni status that he has is pretty incredible.
Yeah, it is incredible. And I know he has a very good reputation, and so the whole program does. It's just it really is something to see, because again, being in that era myself, like I saw that program go from really an unknown program to being now a national dynasty. So it's incredible to see that. We saw it with Ignatius with football, and then we saw it with SVSM with basketball. So Northeast Ohio has a lot to be proud of in that sense, where those are 2 storied programs for their sports, for sure. And
Cool.
I mean, I always tell Corey, people who aren't from Ohio, the athletic, the talent in Ohio in general with all sports is crazy. I mean, people don't realize how much talent is in the state with all, baseball, basketball, football. There's a lot of talent here. Really is.
Yeah. Crazy. I got to watch Tony Gonzalez at Ignatius.
Oh, yeah.
I watched him, and Brian Hoyer, who was my quarterback in 5th grade for North Olmsted Eagles.
Yep.
So I'm watching them play St. Xavier in Lakewood Stadium, and the crowd, the atmosphere is incredible, right? I'm watching it, and I have big eyes. I'm a senior in high school or junior high school. It's amazing, blah, 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 blah. And I come home the next day and tell my dad all about it. He's looking at me. And I explain the story. I go to the downs, the plays, the craziness, the crowd swings. He's like, have you ever been to one of your games? Like, do you know how crazy your games are? I was like, no, I'm into the game. I can't think like that. He's like, you're crazy, because your games are like 20,000 people and it's insane. But you're talking about 10,000 people at Lakewood Stadium or whatever. That was pretty funny.
It's funny you say that, because one of my brother's friends, or actually it was one of my brother-in-law's friends down, I think he's in Wellston, Ohio, which is like a small town kind of in the middle of nowhere, Ohio. Like I think it's about 40 minutes from, and you guys played there actually. And he was saying it was LeBron. I don't know if it was LeBron's senior year or junior year. I can't remember. And he said they packed that place. That pace was so packed you couldn't get in. And he said, once they found out LeBron was coming, the whole town went to the game. And it's just so funny, because anywhere you guys went, obviously, I mean, he was the biggest athlete in the country, the biggest high school athlete in the country, and by far.
Right. We played like a Saturday scrimmage at Stowe High School at 9 a.m. And it's supposed to be, everyone's supposed to be yawning and taking, getting the sleep out of their eyes. And it was sold out. They couldn't sell tickets, but they were handing out tickets. We're starting to play like a 3-quarter scrimmage, and the crowd's crazy going nuts. We're like, we're not ready for this. Like, it's just Sunday, it's Saturday morning. It's like 8 a.m. So yeah, it was like sold out. Like, how was a scrimmage sold out?
I mean,
We're
that's
wearing
incredible.
practice uniform.
You just don't see that, I mean,
No.
and Corey, like, and I want to get onto your college career in a second here, but one more LeBron question. I mean, you said before, and I have actually had a couple of his NBA teammates on here before, and they said the same early on in his career, and they said, we knew he's going to be really good, but we didn't know he was going to be this good. Like, I mean, nobody foresaw him. It's kind of like Steph Curry, where, people, I had CJ Watson on the program who played with Steph his rookie year. And he's like, I knew Steph was going to be a good player. Don't get me wrong, but I didn't,
Right.
no one saw him being like a superstar where he was the greatest shooter of all time and all that. So, but with LeBron, it's like, looking back at it now, do you ever think, at least in our lifetime, that we'll see anything close to him on the basketball court in high school again? Because I've seen some good players. I mean, I haven't seen anybody even close to him, as far as what I've seen in the last, 15 years. Do you think we'll see anything even close to that?
It's going to be a once in a lifetime, because I agree with what you last said. I haven't seen anyone who's close to him. They're showing me like pictures and highlights of Wiggins when he was in high school and whatnot. And I go, those are great dunks, but it's not to have the body that he had and to have the way that he can pass and control himself. It's another world, and I don't think we will see anything like that. He's one of a kind, one of one when it comes to 17-year-olds playing basketball, I think.
Agree. And then everything you said, the passing to me was what separated him from a lot of other superstars coming out of high school or college, because I mean, he was passing like magic and when he was, like I said, in high school. I mean, you don't see many players doing that aren't point guards. So, the fact that this kid was, 6'7", 6'8", and doing that at that age and no look passes and pinpoint passes. I mean, he can see the court better than anybody else. I've never seen anybody. There's very few point guards in the NBA, Corey, that I've seen that have better court vision than LeBron. I mean, I'm talking about John Stockton, Magic, like the greatest of all time, Oscar Robinson. He's right in that category.
He's one of the best passing players of all time.
Ever.
That's incredible.
I mean, he's going to be in the top 10 of almost everything. And when he's done, he really is just a crazy. Him and Tom Brady, I look at their careers and I'm like, these guys are going to have every record, and they're just like, the way they take care of their bodies, and just they're very different than the average athlete. I mean, no disrespect to all the other guys, but they're just different.
Yeah. They just love their sport. Tom loves football and LeBron likes basketball.
Exactly.
That's the key to it. And not everyone who plays professional gets a check to do what they do. Love it. They don't. You know what I mean? True. People will say that. Like, they say like 40% of the NBA are just guys who are really athletic and want to be there.
Exactly. Nope, that's true. And looking now, going into your senior year, did you already have, was Walsh always on your radar, or was that something that came up later? When did you decide on Walsh and why? No,
something that comes up later. I was probably in that Division III, Division II range of being a recruit. And at that level, you don't really get involved first. They don't really start getting involved until maybe late junior year or summer going into your senior year or your senior year. That's just kind of the name of the game for that. Maybe happened midway through our season that we started getting some looks from like Mount Union and Alderson brought us in West Virginia and Walsh University. The funny story is Walsh University, they were going through a coaching transition, and they had a really bad year. And the assistant coach, who is the current coach now, who's coached me, took over. And he's basically told the assistant coach at the time, and says, don't even come to our games anymore. I just want you to go to all the St. V games. So he would go to St. V games, even though Walsh, the team that he's coaching with, was playing. And he would go watch Brandon and I play. And the rapport that we were able to develop with them, and it was just looking back, it was like a no-brainer decision. And the fact that I can go with Brandon, who was one of my good friends and best friends in high school, and can be my college roommate, it was a great experience for me.
It's funny because I look back at my brother's era when he went to Rio Grande, and Walsh was always a good program. And they had a kid named Corey Alpine.
All-time leading scorer.
Yep. So, and I remember he played against my brother, and my brother was the MVP. So him and Corey would have these battles. And my brother was 6'5". My brother was slow, but he could jump out of the gym. My brother was kind of like a Kevin Love. He could shoot threes, but then back in the 90s, that was kind of unheard of for a center to shoot threes. So, and he was the only 2-time MVP of that conference. I think he's still to this day back-to-back MVP. So when he played Corey, I remember Corey could jump out of the gym. He was an incredible athlete. And they had another guy, 6'7", Steve something. I can't remember his last name, but they had a really good team, and it was a battle. I think my brother's team barely beat him. I was like in fourth grade. But I remember going to Walsh's gym, and it was packed, and it was awesome.
Oh, nice.
I just remember so I have a lot of childhood memories of Walsh going there. I think I went there all 4 times my brother played there.
Yeah, because close,
exactly. So he didn't have many games within an hour or two of where we grew up. So it was really cool to see him. But yeah, I have a lot of good memories of that. And it was when I knew you went there, it was kind of cool because it brought back all those memories of 20 years before that. So, when you played there, what was it like? What was the atmosphere like? And, going into that program, did you think you were good enough to win the national championship in 05?
No. The simple question is no in 2005. It's a complete turnover team. A new coach who was the assistant coach. So my coach who signed me and Brandon played at Walsh, and it's like a third all-time leading scorer. He's a hooper. He's very good at basketball, guard, can shoot out the gym. And he became the assistant coach for 10 years, 8 years, I don't know how long it was. And then he became the head coach after tragically Steve Lloyd passed away, his coach. So he was his first year head coach, but he's been there forever. And he got a new assistant. And we had me, Brandon, are new. We had Robert Whaley, who was the transfer out of Cincinnati, University of Cincinnati, new. A kid out of Akron, Jason Hicks, new. So it was just like a whole new roster. So we went from probably being last place in the conference, picked to be last place, to maybe preseason being picked third or fourth out of 10, 12 teams. And then we ended up winning the whole conference. Crazy year, crazy personalities. It wasn't quite like that unflawless year that St. Vincent Mary was 2 years prior, but it all comes down to how you play in March. And we clicked, we got motivated at the right time, and we go to the national tournament, which the national tournament is really fun. You play 5 games in 6 days if you can win it all. And there's 32 teams, and you all play in the same gym. So the first 2 days, everyone's watching each other hoop and getting scouts and figuring out, all seeing each other's numbers. And if you're a junkie, you can sit there all day and just watch basketball, and good basketball too. There's future NBA players who played in that tournament. And I know 2 of them, one of them was on our team. Robert Whaley, he had big time aspirations, but just had some speed bumps along the way. He found his way in Division II, NAI Division II, and basically said he got 1 year to polish yourself and get ready to play professionally wherever it may be. And he got to the national tournament and saw the kind of hoop ball got him motivated. He goes, all right, let's win it. He basically just said, all right, let's try to win it. And he dominated the tournament, and we fed him, and we played off him, and we ended up winning. So that's kind of how that story was, to be honest with you.
I mean, Corey, to win 2 national championships in 3 years, one in high school, one in college, that's unheard of. No one, that just doesn't happen. So it's very rare that, especially going to a team like Walsh who didn't have that story. You didn't have, you said you were last place possibly the year before, and then you come in. That's a very, it's incredible what you did. And, what's your favorite memory of that 05 team? Do you have a favorite game or favorite memory?
I don't know. I can think off the top of my head some games. We played a game. We played St. Vincent, and St. Vincent's out of PA.
My uncle's a professor there.
Okay, that's where the Steelers. That's where the Steelers play. Exactly. That's what everyone tells me that.
We always rag on them.
Where's it? It's where the Steelers do their mini camp, and they have a loaded team. They're probably ranked in the country, and they have Tony Washam, who is he's one of the top 5 basketball players I've ever played on the same court with.
Really,
he's unbelievable. He was really good. He got invited to the Chicago pre-camps, I believe. A solid, thick guard who will catch it at like the elbow, face up, and it's like 1 or 2 dribbles and don't even get the ball at the net. It was awesome. It was really good. Wow. So we played them, and not really expecting to win. And we were back and forth with them, and it's basically the Tony Washam and the Robert Whaley show. Robert Whaley is a center on our team who actually get drafted by the Utah Jazz. And we go back and forth. We're down 2 balls underneath the basket, no time for a timeout. I pretty much, in a way, kind of draw up a play. I don't know what we did. I just grabbed the ball. I threw an overhead pass and went over everybody. Adam Lesh caught it as he landed, slipped. I ran because no one really guards the inbounder. As I threw it, I ran behind him. He tossed it behind me, and I just threw up a prayer, and it went in, and we ended up beating them. And I hit like a pretty crazy game winner. It was awesome. It was a really cool experience.
That had to be incredible.
It was awesome. Yeah, it was cool. Everyone jumped on me. And then later that year, we played St. Vincent at St. Vincent, and it was an incredible battle. Not, I guess, a good team basketball, but both guys scored over 40 points in a college game in 40 minutes. Both guys scoring 40 points is kind of hard, especially one team's playing zone the whole time. So to watch those 2 go at it was, and I was playing, but watching as I'm playing, it was pretty cool. That was a cool game too.
That's really cool. That game winner, that's a once in a lifetime experience.
No, it is. And being a freshman and kind of getting your footing and trying to get into the program. And yeah, it was cool.
And for people listening who don't know, NAIA basketball, again, with Corey playing, my brother playing, I'm very familiar with it. And it's a great brand of basketball. And, I actually had Earl Thomas, who was a coach of Ral Grand for a while on the show about 2 months ago. He's a great guy. And he was talking about, their run in 2001 and just how competitive the NAIA is. And it's just so much talent. It's incredible the amount of talent in college basketball in general. And people don't really, unless you play like you did or my brother, you don't really fully understand what the talent level is. Because if people think it's only in the high rank, the Dukes and the Carolinas, and that's not true. A lot of talent everywhere.
Well, I try to tell people the guard play is probably as good or better. It's just they're not 6'6", 6'7", 6'8". There's probably going to be 2 or 3 6-foot to 6'3" guards playing, but they're going to be able to shoot, drive, dribble, all that stuff. And there's not going to be 6'3", 6'4", 6'7" on the wing with long arms. That's not what you're going to have like at the big school. So.
And we're seeing a lot of guys come out of smaller schools. I mean, a lot of them are NCAA, but they're like the Weber State, Dame out of Weber State, and you got John Morant, and a lot of those guys now coming up out of these smaller schools. And Gonzaga's had a ton of guys that come out, and now they're a big program now, but they weren't for a while. So it's kind of nice to see that happening, because again, I feel like a lot of time, especially back in the old days, if you didn't go to an Arizona or a Kansas, UNC or a Duke, you really weren't didn't expect you to be. That just wasn't, the scouts weren't expecting those kind of guys to make it. But now it's talent's everywhere.
Yeah, it really is. And it's nice to see those guys get opportunities and those schools to get the opportunity to throw off. One person is CJ McCollum, who's right down the street from me. I live in North Canton, used to come to the games, works out at the gym. He's a gym rat, and it's just nice for him to be able to create generational wealth, just being able to go from what school do you go to? Somewhere
Lehigh.
Lehigh.
Yep, I'm glad you mentioned him. Yeah, CJ's a perfect example. I always, being a Northeast Ohio guy, I know he's a big Browns fan. Everything. CJ, it's a perfect example of a guy who is 6'3", 6'2", 6'3", kind of sort of undersized for a shooting guard in the NBA. No one was really sure how good he'd be. I think he was a number 10 overall pick, and obviously now he's an all-star and he's a great player. But it's fun to see those kind of guys pan out. And even Dame, I think he was picked number 6 overall. No one really knew, is this guy going to be that good? And Dame's one of the few true superstars to me in the game right now.
So we had a summer and we're playing at the Canton Civic Center, Canton Urban League, and CJ McCollum is there. He's a sophomore, freshman, and he looks like he's 9.5 years old. I mean, he's so small, so skinny, and they allow him to play because they just know the McCollum family, great family. Keith McLeod is running the show, and he's just killing everybody. It was such a good run for him. And I remember playing, and we're talking about CJ, and he held his own, but he's still so small to be playing in that level or whatnot. And later, 6-7 months later, we're looking through the paper, and Brandon shows me the paper and says CJ, he just grew up, he's a sophomore, had like 50 points in a game. He's like, remember CJ? Remember him? Remember he had 50 points, and he kept growing and growing. But how he was as a senior in high school to what he was I think he came out of his third year, he grew 4 or 5 inches, grew some weight on him, and he was a different type of prospect. I mean, not even close.
I didn't realize he was that small in high school.
He was small at his early age. I don't want to get his back to him, but he was probably 6'2" by his senior year, 6'2", 6'3", if I remember. But yeah, he was a different person when he came back from Lehigh after 1 or 2 years, coming in our gym and our practice. I was like, that looks like a completely different dude.
Wow. Yeah, I'm glad you brought him up, because again, he's one of the many Northeast Ohio guys that I always like following, just because of having been from here and especially going to a Lehigh, and then of course now having all the success in the NBA. But it's a great story. And when you look at your rest of your Walsh career, do you have any other defining moments? And how do you, when you look back at your Walsh career, what are your sentiments on that?
I love when it's nothing to do with achievements on the court. Well, one thing is Brandon and I, when we first got there, Walsh was not a great situation as far as basketball is concerned. We didn't have the great locker rooms. Our facilities were kind of bad. To be honest with you, they were bad. And I think Coach Young would probably tell you at that time, not a lot to sell players to come there, to be honest with you. And when we left in our 4 years there, we had the most wins in a 4-year span ever in the history of that program. We had over 120 wins or something like that. And it just felt good. And then what happened was we were able to get more prospects because of that. And then a guy named Jeremy Shardo, who's going to be the coach there now, who was an All-American at Walsh, and a guy named Lamar Skeeter, who coaches for the Utah Jazz. Both were All-Americans. And coincidentally enough, they went on and had more wins than us. But they will probably both, I'm going to speak for them, but they'll both tell you that they went to Walsh because of what Brandon and I helped build there. You know, they're not walking in. Coach Young is not getting recruits like Jeremy Shardo or Lamar Skeeter if we're still in last place in the conference. And when we came out of our senior year, they were freshmen, you know, and I think Jeremy even said, he goes, I got to hang out with Corey Jones and see what Brandon, what the kind of program they were able to build and the culture they were able to build. That's the kind of program we want to play for. And now today they have, you know, different locker rooms, different a venue where they play at in Division II. And to think again, look back and say, I was kind of helped to be there for the start of that. It was pretty cool.
Yeah, that's very cool. And when you look at the conference, Corey, who was in that? It was you know, like Tiffin, Mount Vernon, were they in that conference? Who was in the conference?
They were. My era, man, it was a really good conference. How Dominican was very good.
Oh yeah,
They
I
had
remember
players
them. Yep.
from Brookhaven, Rio Grande, Mount Vernon, and Cedarville. If you ever been to a Cedarville game, that's such a cool experience.
It is. Yep.
You know, they were there. It was a really, really good program.
Like Finley, Urbana, any of those guys?
I remember, yes, Finley and not Finley. Finley was not. Finley's in the conference now, but I remember, you know, like Jeremy Lamar's classes, they were going 17-1 in the conference or 18-0. But in our era, if we were 14-4, you can win the conference. You know, you have 4 or 5 losses in the conference, you're in good shape of winning, and that's how competitive it was. And it was fun. It was a fun time to play, to be honest.
And that's how it was back in the 90s. My brother was a very competitive conference. I think they had Central State in the conference at that time. Then it was a Middle Ohio conference, and that would I think Finley was in the conference at that point, but
they were, yeah, Finley and them had in a conference, yeah.
Yep. So, but there was a very competitive conference, and I remember going to pretty much every gym in Ohio that he played in. Because I mean, my dad, we would drive at night. I'd probably be in 4th grade, 3rd, 4th grade, and my dad would pick me up, and
that's
we'd drive
cool.
the 4 hours. It was awesome. So that's why I have a lot of memories of the gyms you played in as a kid, and I love watching those games.
There's a lot of colleges in Ohio. Think about.
And that's why I always tell my friends the talent, like the amount of talent, because I'm like, man, these colleges, these games, Corey, were competitive, like as you know. I mean, they were.
Yeah, Shawnee State.
Shawnee State's another one. Yep, actually, my cousin, my brother's son goes there, so going right now is Shawnee, right by the river. In Portsmouth. So yeah, they're very competitive, and it was just fun to get to know that brand of basketball. Because obviously, I grew up watching Ohio State and all the big, all the bigger teams, but to know the NAI now and to know that brand, I'm very fortunate to watch my brother go through there, and now I know a lot of his teammates, and they're like a family, like you guys are, I'm sure. So it's cool to keep all that going.
That's cool.
So Corey, I wanted to talk now post basketball, and obviously you're very well known as a motivational speaker, and you do a lot with kids. What did you do directly after college, and how did you get into the motivational speaking?
I moved to Columbus to be closer to my girlfriend, who's now my wife, and to kind of get out and try something new. I was working at Columbus Distributing, which is a distributor for beer, which is Budweiser, and starting up in the beginning of the sales ranks. And I was merchandising, so I go into the stores and merchandise the product, put product in certain places, and it is a paycheck. And what happened was, I love comedy, Seinfeld and all those. Seinfeld, my favorite show.
Curb and all that.
Love all that stuff. So
same way.
My girlfriend gets me a package for Christmas. I open it up, and it's a picture of like a white letterhead, and it says, "Your comedy career begins. You're signed up for improv classes." And I'm like, "What?" And she's like, "Yeah, I signed you up." And I'm living in a new city, know nobody there. I'm kind of down on my job, just the job. I'm only going to 2 places: the apartment, the 1-bedroom apartment we have, and the job and back. And she's like, "Every Sunday, you're going to go do improv classes." I'm like, "What?" And then you know what? At the end of it, in 10 weeks, you get to perform a live show in front of everybody. I'm like, "What?" So I'm like, you know what? And there's a sign on our refrigerator that goes, "Life begins outside of your comfort zone."
I got the same one in my fridge. Yep.
I'm like, all right. And that's kind of like my going to St. V, like just do something, get out of your comfort zone. Avon Lake's a safe play, going to St. V. So I went to my first improv class, and it was like life-changing. It was so fun. It was so good. The people I met, other actors, other business professionals, just trying to get out there and do something. And it was amazing. And I did my live show, And I'm not a big talker or speaker or anything. I just head down, hoodie up, play basketball. That's my life for the first 20 years of my life, to be honest with you. And my uncle, who is a youth motivational speaker, he's been doing it. He performed at Westview Elementary when I was in third grade. So he's been doing it for a long time. And he's like, I have to go see you. I don't care. I have to go see you, make a fool of yourself. I have to go. So he drives in and I do the show with 8 or 10 other cast members. And it's so fun. It's like my heart's beating on my chest, but it was like I was living. It was like basketball, the unknown, and you're living outside your comfort zone. Again, my heart's beating. I'm like, I'm living now. Like I don't know what's going to happen with this, but I'm going to do something, which again, the same V, I didn't know what was going to happen. I just wanted to do it. So I do the show, and 2 days later, I'm slinging beer in the back of a Giant Eagle or something, or a Kroger, and my uncle calls me and is like, I got a show booked in Cincinnati in like 3 weeks. All right, cool. I'm like, all right, good. My uncle does like 300 shows a year, so I'm not surprised by that. In fact, I'm wondering why he's even calling me to tell me that. He's like, because during that day, I'm gonna be in Michigan, and I told the school you're gonna do it. And I was silent for like 3 minutes. He's like, I saw what you did on stage. You can do this. Just do it and find out. And I go, 3 weeks. Am I going to have enough time in 3 weeks? And I gave him every reason why I shouldn't do it. And I ended with 3 weeks is not going to be enough time. He's like, okay, I'll call them back. But how much time are you going to need? If it's not 3 weeks, is it going to be 4, 5, 6? How many times? 3 weeks in one day? What's the difference? And I basically said, let's just jump in the fire and do it. Let's do it. And he's like, I'll train him. He would be on the road driving to his shows, and I would call him just like this. And I'd write down a whole bunch of notes. He videotaped himself one time. I watched and studied the videotape. I went to one of his performances just to kind of freshen up. And I got the PA system. I practiced with a remote in my hand, and practiced in a little one-bedroom apartment. And I was scared to death. Again, I was nervous, freaking out. And I got to the show and I did it. And they're like, that was great. Good job. And here's your check. And I looked at the check, and it was a lot more than I was making as a beer salesman. And I said, all right, I want to do this. And he goes, you're going to have to really work at it. It's hard, but you can do it. And then, years later, one show turned to two. And if you can do two, years later, I'm doing 100 shows, 120 shows a year. So
that's incredible. What a great story.
Yeah.
And Corey, now looking back all those years later, how did you come up with your talking points, and what do you want to try to convey to the kids, and how did you come up with all that?
Yeah. So, my presentation is entertainment as well, because it's kids and it's school, and you're going to have to entertain and wow and ooh. So I follow the Basketball Jones, which is what my uncle is. I follow that script of making sure kids are engaged and having fun. So I do that, which is probably 20 to 25% of the show. And because I played basketball and it's in my family, so that came natural to me. So that was really easy. The talking points, it's just like, I don't want to compare myself to a stand-up comedian, but you try something and it just grows over time. Unfortunately, to practice public speaking or to practice material is you have to do it in front of a live audience. And it took, I come up with this story, this idea, and a lot of it's like a school might say, we really want to work on like grit and being yourself. So I think of a story idea of what happened with me about being yourself, and I incorporate it, and then I will do an activity, and I'll get into a funny story about being yourself, and it goes a certain way, and then I take my notes from it, and then and as 10 times I do it, after 20 times and 25, I polish it up, and then it's pretty much really good to go. I have stories, 5-7 minute stories that are block of stories that I couldn't mess up even if I was half asleep, because I've done it 100. I've performed over 500 times. So I think, Jerry Seinfeld said the first time he did the Johnny Carson show, that 5-minute set that he did it over 200 to 300 times in front of a live audience. So he couldn't, it's just, you just polish it and do it and see how much better you get.
I mean, stand up and doing any kind of, like, whether it's comedy or talking, any kind of public speaking, it's such an art form. And it's so, I've actually had a couple stand up comedians on here, like Clint Coley and I had Rob O'Reilly on the show. And they're both telling me that Clint told me the one time he went out to, and now he's pretty big, he's DL Hughley's guy. And he was telling me, Corey, he went up to Boston, I think, to do a show. It was like his first show ever. I don't know how he got it. He said nobody showed up. Not one. And he said that, so he's like, that's the kind of stuff you go through, is like, you have to learn how to just kind of accept. But they all say the same thing. Like, now it's just they go up there and they don't even really think about the crowd as much. They think about the crowd, but they're not really That's
Mm-hmm.
not their, where if you're a beginner, that's all you're thinking about is like, oh my God, what if I say this wrong? Or what if I do this? But with you, what would you tell people who want to get into some kind of public speaking or motivational speaking or stand up? What would be your advice, for them?
You have to go to work, and the only reason you can get better at it is, well, first off, the more you do something, the better you become, and that's fact for anything that you do. And you're going to have to do it in front of all facts of life. If you can perform in front of no one, perform in front of no one. If you can do one people, 100 people, whatever the audience may be, the wide range of audiences you can have, the better. You got to bomb. You got to go up there and tell your story that it's going to do great and did good at your hometown, and whoever would listen to it. And then you tell it at someone in maybe the state of Georgia with 3 people there and no one laughs. You got to feel that. So you just learn it. And if you're not getting better after every time you perform, or not taking it serious enough, or you're making notes and trying to get better at it, then you're not going to get to a certain level. You're not going to get better. You have to take what you're doing, no matter what the opportunity is, and learn from it, no matter what.
That's great advice. And what would you say, Corey, is the most rewarding aspect of what you do?
It's really cool when I can go to a show and kids are they're super happy, and you get like my wife works in a corporate and she works at Joann's. I go, how many people hugged you today? Because before COVID and all that stuff, of course, I would get a 3rd or 2nd grade girl run up to me and just give me a big hug, or kids just give me a hug. I had so much fun. Thank you. And those are pretty rewarding. And ever so often I'll get a big stack of letters and kids who've drawn pictures and write like messages and take stuff from my show and write it in a little note. And it's just cool feedback to get, where many people don't get in their jobs.
That is
I haven't
really
been
awesome.
working in the last year, so I haven't got any letters since. So I can't wait to get back out there and do it again.
It just seems like a very rewarding thing. And I followed you on social media a little bit. I've seen some of the stuff you do. And I just feel like you're a very positive, motivating guy. I mean, there's certain people that have that aura and that, they just have that way about them. And I know that you worked hard to get to where you are now. I'm not saying you didn't, but you also, I think a lot of that, I wouldn't say a lot of it, but I think some of it comes naturally just because like, I feel like you're that kind of, you just have a very uplifting personality. So, I think to blend that with the work ethic,
Mm-hmm.
it's gotten you pretty far, obviously. And when you look at it, what was like the number one obstacle you've had to overcome to be who you are today?
Whew, number one out of school. You get a lot of self-doubt. I think I do. I still probably have to challenge myself with that. I just kind of realized over the last year, especially with the last year, that I do have a little bit of anxiety and I overthink things way too much. And when I can, and then maybe that's what basketball did for me, because I can play basketball by myself. I vision my happiest place. If you know the Happy Gilmore, where's your happy place at when you're swinging
Yep.
a golf club? It's Blesser Park, sunset, sundown, hooping by myself. That's easily the place where I can just relax and be me. So I think overcoming any kind of self-doubt and overthinking and trying to just to stay positive, because what you just said, how I'm able to reflect that, how you just described me, is something that I've worked on many, many times over the years, to kind of just to have that personality and be that. I didn't have that growing up. I wished I was more of this when I was in high school or even before then. It would have been probably a little more of a fun experience, but you learn. That's what life is. You have that journey, and you always continue to prove, to say that I'm going to be who I am in 10, 15 years. I hope not, because I hope I keep growing and whatnot.
That's again, it's a great, way to look at life. And it's so tough to do it because I mean, like I struggle with anxiety a lot and I actually have a blog based on anxiety.
Mm-hmm.
And, it's something that it's a daily struggle, Corey. Like I have to, some days are better than others and I have to constantly work at it, but I've gotten to the point where I'm managing it fairly well. And, it's much better now, but for a while there, I mean, I kind of secluded myself and I'm a pretty social guy, but I secluded myself and I just couldn't face I just wanted to be alone or just didn't want to be around people all the time. And it was a shame because it takes away, like, I mean, again, it just, you feel like you're not really experiencing and exploring as much as you could in life. So I think
Yes.
working at it every day and knowing what you have to work on and just going, like you said, it's not always going to feel good. You got to feel the parts aren't going to feel good. You just keep going. But
Yeah.
doing that after a while, you kind of get used to it and you're like, okay, I can get through this. This
Yeah.
happened to me today and I had some anxiety over it, but you know what? I'm good. I'm going to keep going.
Yeah.
So I think that's so crucial. Well, I have one last question for you.
Okay.
And I ask this to every guest and I love hearing the answer. When you look back, 30, 40 years from now and you're retired and you're talking to your grandkids,
Mm-hmm.
what do you want them to know about the legacy of Corey Jones?
Man, what a good question. 30, 40 years. Um, that he lived and didn't exist. So when you say he lived outside of his comfort zone and always tried and was not afraid to fail, wasn't afraid to fail. and he just did everything he could to be happy, and for everyone, for his family. So I hope that I got my wife with me and my kids, and they know that I did everything to make them happy and have some fun.
I love it. That's a great answer. It really is.
Yeah.
It's so cool hearing all the different answers, but I have a lot of similar answers as far as people just saying, look, I want to, like you said, I want people to look back and realize that I did what the best I could. And I tried to inspire people, or I tried to love my family, or, it's cool to hear all these
Yeah.
answers. So
Yeah.
it's something that gets you thinking a little bit. Cause I love,
Sure.
yeah,
Yeah, I'm thinking.
those
I'm
wheels
still
turning.
thinking about it. I might have to text you another one answer as I'm thinking about it. But it's good. It's like improv. The first response is usually their best one.
I totally agree. So, well,
Mhm.
Corey, I want to thank you for coming on, man. We could talk for another couple hours. I mean, this is fun
Sure.
doing this. So, and it's been cool, like kind of reconnecting and hearing your experience all the way through, grade school, all the way to where you are now, and to kind of see the story of how you became, the man you become. So,
Yeah. Well,
I
thank
want to
you.
thank you for coming on and sharing it.
Well, I appreciate the opportunity. This was fun. So I'm happy with your success and everything you're doing. Keep doing what you do, and keep living outside your comfort zone.
Absolutely, man. So we'll keep in touch. All right.
All right. Sounds
All
good.
right.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
Corey. Take
All
care.
right.
All right.
Bye.